Okay, so I just saw the new film The Dark Knight Rises at the cinema. This is, of course, the third installment in the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy, the third and final installment, I should say. Um, it's going to be quite a difficult one to approach to review, primarily because pretty much everyone has seen it. Uh, Everyone on the internet has done a review of it. Well, in the review sphere of the internet. But I'm still doing this review just so that I can give my own personal thoughts on it. Hopefully, give insight to it that's not been said already, and of course just give my own personal take on it. This review, for the most part, will be spoiler free, which is important because I think that for this film, you really shouldn't know what goes on in it. You really shouldn't have it spoiled for you because it might spoil your film watching experience. I was unfortunate enough to have certain aspects of the film spoiled for me because I watched someone's review of it on the internet and they hadn't warned about spoilers, so that was a bit unfortunate. I'll keep this review as spoiler free as I can. If I find that I'm going to discuss spoilers, I'll of course give a warning, and I'll put on the screen what time you can skip to if you want to keep watching the review and avoid the spoilers. So yeah, I'll do that. So yeah, I'll get right into the review. Firstly, I should just say that I really did think this film was superb. It was an astounding achievement. I enjoyed every single minute of it. I would probably go so far as to say that this is the best film that I've seen in possibly 5 years in terms of current releases. It really did blow me away. I think it's the best of the Christopher Nolan Batman series, and probably the best comic book film that I've seen ever. I'm just going to give a quick summary on what my thoughts were on the other Batman films. Batman's probably my favourite of the comic book superhero type things in terms of films. I mean, I remember when I was growing up, one of my favourite films was the 60s version of Batman, where it was like Adam West, and it was really silly, really cheesy. I actually watched it quite recently as a sort of nostalgic exercise, and I still enjoyed it. It just, I mean, if there's a spectrum in terms of the Batman films with like the sort of really cheesy, silly stuff like Adam West, Joel Schumacher at one side, and then on the other side of the spectrum we've got the Christopher Nolan Batman films. I think the films work when they're on the extreme ends of that spectrum. Like if they're really serious, like the Nolan Batman films, they work and they're excellent. And if they're at the complete other end of the spectrum, like the Adam West Batman, it works as well, just because it takes itself for what it is, which is just outright silliness, and it goes with it, and it ends up being fun. So I did enjoy that. In terms of the films released in like the 80s and 90s with like Tim Burton and Joel Schumacher, none of them I thought were particularly good. The Tim Burton Batman films, I thought their downfall was that in that spectrum that I just referred to, they fell directly in the middle of it. They had serious aspects to them. They were trying to be dark and edgy and all that sort of thing, but at the same time it was mixed in with stuff that was just really cheesy, over the top, and often quite funny as well. Like I remember Jack Nicholson's Joker. I actually just cracked up whenever he was on screen. He was hilarious. And whilst the Joker's supposed to be a comedic character, it's not to be to the extent where you're in fits of laughter at what he's doing. So I didn't think they worked. The Joel Schumacher Batman films have a notoriety for being just outright horrendous. I actually think that they work in the sense that they're with the Adam West Batman films in that spectrum. They're silly, they're cheesy, and they just go for it. They embrace that, and I think they end up being quite enjoyable in that respect. Like obviously, I'm not going to take them seriously, but I did think they were quite good, and I can go on the record for having said that. Yes, mwhite148 says that Batman and Robin was okay. In terms of the recent Christopher Nolan Batman films, I think they are yeah, as I said earlier, astounding achievements in modern filmmaking. Uh, I really did enjoy them. I think Batman Begins, from an objective viewpoint in terms of weighing up the good and bad things about the trilogy, I think it's probably the best. But in terms of film watching experiences, in terms of being entertained and engrossed, and in terms of the gravity of the plots and the character arcs, I think that the Dark Knight Rises is the best of the trilogy, and from my personal view. But from a subjective view, Batman Begins is the best. The Dark Knight, I thought, was excellent. I didn't quite understand why it was as hyped up as it was. I mean, of course, yes, it was a great achievement, but I think the problem with it was that Heath Ledger's performance actually became bigger than the film itself. Like, it wasn't so much a Batman film, it was a Joker film. And that, for me, it was a slight problem, but you know, the film was still a great spectacle to watch. And now, of course, we have The Dark Knight Rises. With this, so much happens in this story that it was sort of difficult for me to collate in my mind and then formulate an opinion on it. But I've finally got there, I hope. I mean, for starters, this is masterful, epic storytelling. It's done with immense skill and precision and craft work. It's an artistic achievement. I really enjoyed the way that the story conveyed this sense of scale, of magnitude. You know, this is a film where some really serious things are happening. You know, characters are being pushed to their limits and forced to recover themselves, and I thought that this film really conveyed that. You know, this is a huge thing that's happening, and I enjoyed that. Batman as a character really grows, and I feel that, unless you count that Batman Begins, I feel that that's the only time we've ever seen that. We see a Bruce Wayne that's became reclusive and that's degenerated physically and mentally. I mean, the film's set, I think it's 10 years after the Dark Knight, and you can see that the years have really taken their toll on this character, and it's really quite an interesting place to take the character. And Christian Bale, I think he's cemented himself as the definitive Batman with this film, and the definitive Bruce Wayne, in terms of his acting and how the character was explored and developed. As for the villains, Bane was magnificent. He was, I think he's I remember I did my top 12 favourite villains list a few months ago. I was worried that I was going to live to regret doing that list when I did it, because within a few months, obviously, The Dark Knight Rises was coming out and Bane was going to be in it, and he looked to be a really impressive villain, and I was worried that I would live to regret not waiting and being able to put him in it. And yes, I do live to regret it. I think, for me, Bane was a better, more formidable villain than the Joker, and I put the Joker at number, was it? I think it was maybe number 3. Yeah, no, I think it was number 3 on that list, and I think Bane's better than him, so that puts him in a very, very high place. I think in terms of just screen presence, Bane's probably one of the biggest screen presences that I have seen in a film for a very, very long time. I mean, when he's on screen, he is the focal point. I mean, there's one scene where it's just like the characters walk into a room, and you're not really expecting anything. They walk into a room, and he's just there, and yeah, it's almost a shock to your system. You almost get a jolt just seeing this character there, just consuming the frame, almost. I mean, it's not just the fact that, you know, Tom Hardy's obviously really bulked himself up to play this physically formidable role. It's just the sort of the conduct and the personality as well, which was really key to making his character such a physical presence. and that is obviously why he's such an interesting character, because Batman's never been, well, in the Christopher Nolan Batman films, he's never been tested to the point, he's never been pushed physically by a villain, he's never been defeated either in a fist fight. I should mention that the fights in this film are amongst the most visceral that I've ever seen in a film like this. When there's a fist fight between Batman and Bane in the first half of the film, and it's very, very engaging. Like, you get a real sense that Batman is struggling, he's giving it his all, and he's exhausted, and he's getting beat, and you feel the weight of all these punches and how he's going down and he's weakening, and it's really, really effective. I don't know if that's just because it was in the cinema, and you could feel the vibration of the punches through the seats and the surround sound and all that. I don't know, maybe, but I did feel as though the fights in this film were unlike anything I'd ever seen. They really did have impact, and they really did feel as though they were real, and you were on the edge of your seat every single minute of it. With regards to Bane's voice, I understand there was some controversy before this film was released, like there was test screenings or something where people just couldn't understand what the character was saying, and now I understand that it differs from cinema to cinema. Some people are saying they still can't understand him, and others are saying they can understand him fine. I fit into the latter category there. I could understand him no problem. I actually thought his voice sounded very good. It was very fitting, very appropriate, very unique. I really enjoyed it. When I first heard it at the beginning of the film, it caught me by surprise, because I remember seeing the trailers, and in the trailers his voice was really deep and really, really gruff, almost guttural. But at the beginning of this film it was much higher, and my concern was that it sounded almost a bit shrill, a bit sing-songy, which I was a bit concerned about. But then after he said a few things, it's like, yeah, this is the voice of a real villain. The voice was perfect. It was really good to listen to, and I don't say that often. It was a really good voice to hear and to listen to. I thought Catwoman in the film was excellent as well, perfectly realised. I was unsure about Anne Hathaway playing her, because I don't think I'd ever really seen her in anything else. I understand she did like a few comedy films, so it was a bit of a risk for Christopher Nolan to choose her, but in the end it worked out for the best. You get the look of Catwoman. Well, okay, I'm sorry, I'm calling her Catwoman. She's never called Catwoman in the film. It's always Selina Kyle. But the look of the character was excellent. The manner was brilliant. The mood as well. Like, this is a character who's bad, who's often on the wrong side of things, but then ultimately, does the right thing. I thought that was really realised well. Then you've got the obviously the sort of like-hate relation with Batman. I thought that was done quite well too. Then you've got the other cast members. I thought they were all in fine form. There was no character, no performance that I took any issue with at all. Morgan Freeman, Michael Caine, Gary Oldman, all very well done. Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character, he's a new one for this film. I thought he was actually quite an excellent character. If you think about it, he's a cop who has sort of the Batman ethos and conscience, and it really turned out to be quite a fascinating character. And there's a dialogue between him and Bruce Wayne at the beginning of the film, well, near the beginning of the film, that I thought was really, really well done, very well scripted, and I thought it was a great way to introduce the character and start off the film, really. Speaking of the start of the film, there's a great set piece at the beginning of the film. It was in the prologue, where Bane essentially crashes a plane. That's the the gist of the scene. It's done perfectly. I really enjoyed it. Great way to start the film. The look of the film was fantastic. I thought filming in different places really gave it a better atmosphere than the Dark Knight. I mean, the Dark Knight was filmed entirely in Chicago, but in this film, you had parts of it filmed in different cities in the US, in different places in the UK. I think parts of it were filmed in India as well, and that really adds to the atmosphere. It makes it feel like a more human place. I mean, this has been said by other people, but I think it needs to be reiterated. I mean, Christopher Nolan is obviously someone who really deeply loves and understands the art of cinema and filmmaking. I mean, it's quite clear that he takes his inspiration and his understanding of film from the likes of, Kubrick, Hitchcock, Spielberg and Ridley Scott back when they made good films. You even see hints of like Martin Scorsese and Michael Mann in some of these films. He's a really talented filmmaker. I look forward to seeing where he goes next. I think I would actually like to see him do science fiction, because he did a good job with the ideas in Inception, and that's sort of where I think he's going. But I would especially like to see him do it. The special effects in the film were very, very real. In terms of the action sequences, I don't think they're quite on par with some of the action scenes in The Dark Knight, but they are still pretty spectacular. There's one scene where you've got 100 prisoners and 100 police officers all fighting at once in the street, like a fist fight, and it was choreographed excellently, which is really difficult considering you've got all these extras and participants that you need to instruct very carefully what to do so it all looks real and gritty, and they pulled it off successfully, and I was really impressed by it. The themes of the film were very, very appropriate and very, very good. I think in years' time people will look on this film as a beacon of the mood of the times that we currently live in. Obviously, right, okay, I think this is where I'm going to say the spoilers start. It's a sort of a theme on communism, and of course the sort of anti-capitalist, anti-wealth views that some have taken in light of the recent economic recession. But okay, the spoilers are going to start now, so I'll put it on the screen where you can skip to if you want to avoid them. Essentially, right, you've skipped now. Okay, essentially what happens is Bane takes over the city of Gotham. Like he destroys all the bridges and what have you, and starts up a communist state that he claims is run by the people. Now, of course, you're on Batman's side, because with the way Bane's plan works out, there's an atom bomb that's going to go off whatever way it turns out. So of course you're on Batman's side for all of it, whatever your political views are. But it does conjure up, the sort of debate over whether or not Bane is acting in good intentions or whether he's not. Like, obviously in recent years you've had the banking crisis, which led to the big economic recession that we find ourselves in, and you of course get the people that call for wealth to be redistributed and more taxes on the rich and an end to the banker bonus culture and all that sort of thing. I mean, this is nothing new, I should point out. I mean, you've had debates on communism versus capitalism since the days of Thomas More in the Middle Ages, and even further back. I mean, likes of Plato and Aristotle, they dealt with they didn't use the words communism, and they didn't realise it the way that Marx or Engels did, but they did theorise on states which we would today identify as communist. So I mean, it's nothing new, but it's definitely been the school of thought behind it's definitely been revived in certain quarters of society as a result of the circumstances in which the current recession manifests itself. I mean, in America you have the Occupy 99% or whatever the hell it is, they are protesting the culture of greed and all that sort of thing. So it's definitely a current issue. And the theme of the film is that Bane, he overthrows the city and establishes a socialist state. And of course that idea, that anti-capitalist vibe is conveyed through the latter half of the film. And it's of course, you could call it a throwback to the historical events, the revolutions in Cuba and Russia and all these sorts of places. But obviously, yeah, that's the main theme of the film. It's a proper, it conjures up those proper communist versus capitalism ideas, which is really impressive. Few films have the audacity to take that view and not do it in an overly simplistic manner. No, this film takes a very intelligent approach to it, and I was enthralled by it. And even as I was going out, the people who I was with, a good old debate over socialism versus capitalism was conjured, and I'm assuming that's what Christopher Nolan was going for. So in that respect, I thought it was a superb exploration of the anti-capitalist feelings which are manifesting in many places in society as a result of the recession in present times. And I do think that this film will last as a beacon of these times for many years to come. So well done, Christopher Nolan. You've made a film that's going to be remembered for a very long time. Now on to the minor sort of nitpicky issues that I had with the film. I mean, I don't like to nitpick, and I think that there are plot holes in this film that I did sort of notice while I was watching it. But overall, I think the overall weight of the film and the feel of it, and just the fact that you're caught up in every minute of it, I think that sort of transcends the plot holes, and just you sort of forget about them seconds after you notice them. But the problems that I did have with it, this is end of spoilers, by the way. I thought the very last twist of the film involving the Marion Cotillard's character, I thought the twist involving her character, I thought it was poorly conceived and poorly executed. Let's just say she's revealed to be something that she's not, and I don't understand quite why they did it. It just seemed really out there. It took me out the film for a minute or so. I just felt as though they shoehorned it in at the last minute, and they should, if they were going to go down that road, they should have really introduced it much earlier in the film, because it is literally in the last 20 or so minutes, and I felt as though it was just too rushed, and it sort of undermined Bane as the villain. Like, up until then, Bane was massive. He was the guy in charge. He was really he was above everything, physically and psychologically and mentally as well. But this twist sort of brought him down a notch, and I didn't like that. But as I said, and also in terms of the technical aspects, I don't know if it was just the cinema that I was in, but I felt that the music, which is spectacular anyway, but I thought the music at points near the end was just a bit too loud. Like, I've had that problem sometimes when I'm doing videos on here. Like, I'll cut, edit and do all that sort of stuff with a video, then when I go to upload it I find that the music that I've used in the background is too loud and I can't hear what I'm saying, or it's too distracting, so I have to redo it and lower the volume. I think with this film they should have really lowered the volume of the music towards the end. Like, you've got scenes where characters are just talking and it's like you can't really concentrate on what they're saying because of the impassioned music score that's going off in the background. So yeah, but those 2 points that I raised, very easy to overcome. They only took me out for maybe minutes and seconds each. I think The Dark Knight Rises is my favourite of the trilogy, and I say that because I think this is the film in which the character arc of Batman was the strongest. If he really went from, it was almost like a last battle for him. Like, he goes from, he's in a very weak, poor state, and then he goes to an even weaker state because he pushed himself too hard, and then he brings himself up again, and then he gives himself a finale, hangs up the cloak, and I'm not going to reveal how he does that exactly. And I thought that was fantastic. As a conclusion to the trilogy, it really was brilliant. I mean, it harks back to the old Star Wars trilogy, where each of the 3 films were individually excellent, and the conclusion really did leave you feeling satisfied. I think it's in league with that in terms of just tying up all the loose ends, and giving you an ending that's really quite upbeat and pleasant in its own way, which is to be commended. It really is. The film is engrossing from beginning to end. At no point was I bored. I mean, even if you're not interested in comic book films generally, I would still recommend this, because it was a great spectacle of a film. Don't miss this at the cinema. Really, if you're going to see this, see it at the cinema. It was an experience. It really was. And it's been many years since I've been to see a film at the cinema, and it's left this sort of impact on me just because of how good it was. I can't wait to see it when it comes out again on DVD. I really did enjoy it. In terms of a rating, I'm going to give it 9 out of 10, which I've never given before. I mean, the highest rating I've given up until now is an 8 out of 10, which is excellent. The reason I say 9 out of 10, not 10 out of 10, is because 10 out of 10's a very, very elusive category. It's the films that I consider to be the best of all time. Like, if I did a top 20 list, like my top 20 favourite films, about a year ago, probably not even all the films in that would be 10s out of 10s. Maybe the top 5 roughly, but other than that, no, 9s and 8s. So a 9 out of 10 is one of my highest recommendations I can give to a film. It really was an experience, and you will live to regret it if you don't see it at the cinema. So I wholeheartedly encourage you to see it at the cinema. It is the best film watching experience I have had in at least the last 5 years.